All right, good morning, guys. What's going on? Hopefully, some pretty good lighting going on today. Well, we're at the end of April here, more or less. I know we have a few more days, 2018 and stuff, and haven't really streamed the last 2 weeks. I think it's been 2 weeks. I don't know. I've been working a lot, per usual, but this has had me traveling across rich lands, or rich lands. This has had me traveling across Virginia. Just a reminder that Sunday morning, even though it is not raining, I highly recommend coffee before you do anything that involves opening your mouth, which I should have thought about. So, in my travels between the one end of Virginia to three quarters across Virginia, might as well be all of it and stuff, I actually got to stop at an Ollie's and a little comic book shop here and there and just got like a handful of stuff. Hey, Warsmith Scotty, finally able to catch one of the live shows. Awesome. I'm actually going to be doing another live show since we brought that up. I'm actually going to be doing another live show where I'm going to go ahead and talk about Avengers Endgame. I've watched it and I have a lot to say. And it's my kind of thing where I think Infinity War was the better movie. I think Endgame was the perfect goodbye and was full of Easter eggs, which is my thing. I love little trivia and Easter eggs and trying to find little things they throw out there. All right, we got some people showing up here. Now, like I said, I've got a small haul, but I've actually got a lot to say about it. Hopefully, you can see me on here. The internet is really wonky around here in this little town. They have outsold what the broadband around here is able to handle, and then you have people streaming all the time on Netflix and everything. And I have joined the Roku crowd after 10 years. What was it? 2008, I think. Whenever Rock of Love was in its second season, I think. If you remember that show from the 2000s, I cut it. I cut the cord. I got out of the cable. I got out of the satellite. And I'm always amazed that when I go to a hotel for work or I stay with friends or something, I get to flip through the channels. And I'm sort of like, it's the same stuff that I've gotten out there. But I've joined the Roku crew. And I'm kind of digging the Roku. It's kind of fun to play around with. To me, it's the kind of thing where if you spend an hour, maybe 2 hours, you want to watch TV to kill a little time, it's good enough. All right. So I think we got enough people here. I hope everybody's doing well. For the people that's popping up, I'm gonna be doing a live stream here, probably not too long after this one, where we talk about Avengers Endgame. So where's the first Deathstroke appearance? I wished I had it. That new Teen Titans #2 is one of my holy grails that I usually get a feel or an optimism about things I'm going to get. That I'm going to run across one day. New Teen Titans #2. I think I missed my shot. I ran across it for $30 back in 2011, maybe, and I should have bought it then. I don't see me ever getting it. All right, guys. Oh, we lost somebody. What did I do? What did I do? It hurts my feelings. But anyway, moving on with you guys. But like I said, we'll have an in-game stream after this talking about it. So the first two things is I found an Ollie's in Harrisonburg, West Virginia. I actually pulled into Harrisonburg at 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night, trying to find a hotel. I had an impromptu trip I had to take for work. So it was like 8:30, I don't know, 8 o'clock at night or something. Yes, that is War of the Gods, King Ragnarok. I'm about to talk about it a little bit here. Um, so I ended up in Harrisonburg, Virginia. I think that's like a college town or something. I don't know. There's a great big huge college that you can see from the four lane, but I could not find a hotel room. I stopped to get something to eat. I stopped at an Ollie's. I stopped trying to find a hotel. I was eating dinner at 9 o'clock at night. It was about 10:30 up the road. I found it, but before I caught this Ollie's, I didn't even know it was there. I saw it and I pulled in. I think I've been there before. I just wasn't thinking about it. I was ready to eat and go to bed, but I ended up getting War of the Gods trade. I've already took the price tag off, but I think this was like seriously like $3.99 at this Ollie's. And War of the Gods was the big event that was supposed to be the big crossover event slash celebration of Wonder Woman's birthday. I want to say this is 91, maybe. I should have looked at it in here stuff, right? And I have all the chapters. The thing about this is War of the Gods was really odd. It actually caused George Perez to leave DC for years. You heard all sorts of rumors about why and things, right? Well, first of all, he didn't think it was getting promoted enough to, it's Wonder Woman's, birthday, if you will, and he didn't feel like that DC was doing enough. Oh, cool. I just picked up the Alex Ross Paul Dini Superman Peace on Earth. Any good? I liked it. I liked it. I mean, it's subjective. Those big tabloid issues were just for those characters. All right, King Ragnarok was all about this event. All right, cool, man. So I would see, I had issue one forever, and I found issue three, and then I would see little chapters of the crossover. And the crossovers were really easy to follow because it would say War of the Gods on the top and give you a number as in chapter, right? And it ran through, I remember it was running through Animal Man and Superman and Legion and all this stuff. And then there's actually a few War of the Gods crossovers. They always seem to do this that were part of War of the Gods, but they didn't label it as such. So you wouldn't know it was a crossover. But this was really George Perez's swan song with DC for quite a few years because he'd been building up to a story where Steve Rogers was going to marry, oh my God, one of the supporting cast. He was not going to marry Wonder Woman. Etta Candy? I don't know. We're going way back. But Steve Rogers was going to get married, and they stopped it because Messner Lowe's was coming on, and they kind of wanted to have some events there. George Perez was leaving this book after he and Lynn Wein got together and revamped it with an amazing number one. I think the first six issues of this Wonder Woman After Crisis has not been touched. Steve Rogers. Did I say Steve Rogers? Steve Trevor. Thanks for catching that. I saw Avengers Endgame last night. Steve Rogers is well on my mind. It called me out on some mistakes, man. Apparently, when I was talking about Conan, instead of saying Robert E. Howard, I said Edgar Rice Burroughs, and I got called out by a friend on it. And I went, did I really do that? Too much stuff up here in this head. So anyway, how's the book? I read bits and pieces, and the last 2 3 years, I've been on a kick of trying to complete all these old crossover series. I completed. I needed one or two issues of Legends. That I had all of those, but there was one or two issues that got away from me back then. And then I did War of the Gods, and what else did I get? Anyway, I'm completing a few things of these big crossovers, and I completed this one also rather easily, which has amazed me. There's an issue or two that made me nervous, but now that I've got this trade actually collects War of the Gods 1 through 4, and I think the last four issues that ends with issue 62 of Wonder Woman of George Perez's run. And I had that issue, or I had that issue, and George Perez actually wrote a letter to Wonder Woman as a goodbye before he took off. And I don't think that might be one of the issues that isn't labeled a War of the Gods crossover. But anyway, they really kind of, I don't know what the word is. I know it's a business, and I don't want to say mistreated George Perez, but he ended up leaving. They didn't really push this book. They changed some things in the story that he wasn't allowed to do. They didn't really push Wonder Woman's celebration of Wonder Woman's anniversary like he thought they should, like they do with Superman and Batman and stuff, right? So he ended up leaving for a while. I remember seeing a poster in my local comic shop of that first issue of War of the Gods, and it looked amazing. Wish I had it. They're easy to find. These books aren't worth a lot of money, right? But I've been reading this. Hey, Charleston 66, what's up? We got my first book up. What's up, brother? Good to see you here. But I've been reading this, and it's a chore to read. It really is. Basically, the biggest thing is that the Roman gods have picked their champion, who is Captain Marvel, uh, and they did not go with Son of Vulcan. Uh, there you go. And the Greek gods are still having their champion be Wonder Woman, and it's a war of the gods, the Greek and the Roman gods fighting for Olympus, and who knows, all right. Meanwhile, you got Cersei working with some Amazons from around the world out in the South America, where you're like, what? And I really feel like it's the editorial that hurt this. Plus, I think George Perez has gone on record saying that he had too much in the pot going on. He was doing Infinity Gauntlet, the pencils at the time. He was doing breakdowns and story for Wonder Woman, breakdowns and stories for War of the Gods, and who knows what else. The poster that is, I got the main series and the main tie-ins as a child. Oh, awesome, man! Yeah, I'd love to get that poster. Um, so I think he really has gone on saying, with the stress of dealing with editorial, he just did the 3 issues of Infinity Gauntlet, who I personally always thought that was the plan. George Perez was the coup to get you to get that series, I think, because of how famous he was for Crisis and stuff. You know what I'm saying? But that's my X Files conspiracy theory. But this is a chore to read. I think I'm through the first chapter, the first issue of Wonder Woman that it crosses over, and it's just the thing where I'm like, okay, we get it. everybody is starting to realize that their Zeus is not Zeus, and it's really Jupiter from the Roman gods. It's not Heracles, it's Hercules. They look so similar. The River Styx raftman is not the River Styx raftman. I mean, it's just you get it. You know what I mean? It's you get it. You're like you're over explaining that they're not the same gods, but they're similar. So yeah, so hopefully it will get better. I flipped through the actual War of the Gods like number one and number three over the years, and it didn't feel like such a chore to read. So hopefully this will get better. But I've tried reading this two times this month since I got it. Luckily I got it cheap. I recommend it. I'm a Perez fan, right? The other thing I got is I pushed Legion of Superheroes, and I'm scared to death about Brian Michael Bendis supposedly bringing them back, if what they're hinting. They totally didn't push this event. DC was going to go all in on Armageddon 2001. Yeah, yeah. And they even changed the ending of 2001 because it was so. They had an annual. They had events where all through all the annuals at DC, one of the heroes was the bad guy. Armageddon 2001 or something, right? And he was like the monarch. You know what I mean? He had taken over. He won. He beat all the heroes, and he wore a suit of armor, so you didn't know who it was, right? Everybody guessed who it was. Everybody who picked up that first issue guessed it like in the first three pages or something, right? So they changed the ending, and it was awkward, and they went with it, and it led to they tried to play around with it in Zero Hour, and then finally what was it, Infinite Crisis. I think Jeff Johns finally like corrected it where it was the original hero that was supposed to be the bad guy. Oh, now some of the annuals were fun, don't get me wrong. It was the introduction of Wave Rider and all this stuff, but they had some really cool annuals. The Flash annual was pretty cool, and I think I've got them scattered around here. You also had like Eclipse. The annuals, the thing of selling the annuals during the summer was quite funny between Marvel and DC. You know, like higher priced books, more room story to tell, and mediocre stuff. Yeah, I think DC handled their annuals better than like King of Pain at Marvel through the return of the days of future past or whatever with Ahab or whoever the dude was. I can go on and on. I'm talking nonsense. If I had the books to show them up, I could laugh with them. But anyway, but I always push Legion of Superheroes, and I'm one of those guys. It's because when I was a kid, one of my first issue a comic that I bought with my money, not the first comic book I read, but I was like 5 or 6 years old, 1979. Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes 255. Haha, I guessed too, and it was only 10 at the time. I was a huge fan of the character, not to spoil it, and they just drug him through the mud afterwards. Yes, they did. So referring to Armageddon 2000, 2001, whatever it's called. What's funny is I think I have them here. But anyway, Legion of Superheroes. I've always been a Legion fan. What's wild is that these are kids, and I'll show you a few things here in a minute. I have another Legion book I found from way back when. But I just, as a kid, the Legion is your thing. There are a bunch of kids too, but there was a darkness to them. The stakes were high. They were from across the world. They had some of the first superhero deaths in the 60s that I was aware of. You know what I mean? There's always a price to be paid, and these were kids. And believe it or not, Brad Meltzer and Jeff Johns nailed exactly what the difference is between Legion of Superheroes and Justice League and Avengers and everything like that. They would give their lives to each other, and I can show that for a minute. It's not that they were a team; it's that they were Legion, and all this stuff, right? So we got this DC showcase here, Legion Superheroes presents, where we go all the way back and some of their first appearances in Adventure Comics and stuff, and some of their stories. And I've already flipped through this, and I have a lot of these in the Adventure Digest books you could get in the early '80s and things like that. A lot of familiar stuff, but my favorite era of the Legion is the early stuff. The stuff where Kurt Swan was on there, and of course these are black and white stuff. Ed Hamilton and Jerry Siegel worked on these and stuff, right? I like the Ultra Boy and Mon-El and Superboy all hanging out, where the Legion succeeded in having threats with the most powerful characters in the DC universe, if you will, where other writers say Superman's hard to write because he's so powerful and stuff. The Legion did it every month and nailed it. Okay, so I got a little bit of an Alan Moore kick. It kind of cracks me up because I had to track one of these books down because it's the first appearance of Mogo. Mogo is the sentient planet that they ended up giving him the role down the line where that planet helps the rings find a successor when somebody dies, stuff like that, right? So I ended up getting this. I actually ordered this off of eBay because I was just tired of trying to find it, and I got a pretty good deal. But I ended up finding this in a dollar for a dollar in a dollar bin. And in the comic book shop I was in, he had his dollar bins over here, dollar books. And on another table, he had stuff that was priced. He had two or three of these priced, and I found this in the dollar bin, and he honored it and stuff, right? But oh man, Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons from 1985, right before or around the time we were about to get Watchmen, where they have a backup story in this. And of course, we have John Stewart taking off his mask as Green Lantern. Um, but yeah, this is just some cool. I love my Alan Moore stuff. I love my Alan Moore stuff. I'll pick it up. And this is probably the second or third copy of this I have. But when I find these cheap, I feel like it needs a home because it has the team, Kevin O'Neill and Alan Moore. They have a story in it. And it's of Abin Sur, and it started out as, why was Abin Sur a Green Lantern who can fly through space with his ring in a spaceship, and he crashed on Earth and Hal Jordan found him in a crashed spaceship when Green Lanterns can travel through space without it. And it turns out he ends up on a demon planet. And this has Kevin O'Neill of martial law fame, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen fame, 2000 AD, and all this stuff, right? And this is a great backup issue. And this is a Gil Kane cover, but the artist changed it for the characters and stuff. It shows the original cover in the back, and I don't think it was for Tales of the Green Lantern Corps, right? This is number two. But just a great Alan Moore story that ended up introducing Sodom Yat, and this laid the groundwork for Blackest Night. Jeff Johns for his epic Green Lantern run, and the last great event at DC, in my opinion, the Blackest Night. He just pulled from the Alan Moore stuff. Ye gods, I've never thought about that with Abin Sur. Yeah, that was a thing back then. Back when you were get with other people who read comics and stuff back in the days where it was much more stigmatized and stuff. You always have somebody would pop up with something that you just have to scratch your head. You'd be loving it. You didn't really read too deep into your comics, and then somebody would pop up and be like, "Hey man, why is this?" And you would think about it. Comic books really helped me dig in there and get some critical thinking and looking at things. And stuff like that. Meeting people like that who would question those stories. Sometimes you thought they were just an asshole, and you want to look at them and say it's just a comic book, enjoy it. But then you'd be like, no, really, why is that? And you would love to have a story like that where questions like that would get answered. That's one of the reasons I love Garth Ennis's first work at Marvel. That Punisher kills the Marvel universe, because he used a lot of common sense to have the Punisher kill off a bunch of very powerful characters. You know what I mean? And there's one or two of them he killed, like the Hulk, the way he killed the Hulk in that book, that we talked about on the bus when I was 10 years old. All right, the next book here is so funny. It is so funny. I've decided I sort of want to get some of those Baxter series and complete them from DC back in the day. And some of them, you can find Omega Man in quarter bins, 50-cent bins forever. Everybody knows that Omega Man number 3 is the money book because it's the first appearance of Lobo. But apparently his second and third appearances are sort of hard to find. I don't think they're money books, if you will, right? So I really had a hard time finding issue 5, and I think issue 10, I think. And then I found them. I found them at a convention earlier in the month. And lo and behold, I've ended up starting to find them in 50-cent and dollar bins again. Here's Omega Man number 5, the second appearance of Lobo. And you better blink or you're going to miss them in this. You know, I'm just going to grab those appearances. If they ever end up putting Lobo in a movie or anything like that, of course, it's going to go up. Eventually, even for 5 minutes, it's kind of cool to have. I do like Lobo. I didn't discover Lobo until the Justice League run with the Montes and Giffen, of course, and McGuire. But I got him. And for everybody that doesn't know, Lobo started out as a joke. Keith Giffen made him as a parody of all the machismo, violence, and stuff that was in comics, and he took off. And Giffen was just sort of like, wait, no, this isn't a serious character. Now, Fables. If you remember Fables from Vertigo, it started out. There's a TV show that I don't know if it's still on the air called Once, where they're for a whole 5 minutes. Everybody was like, "Did you guys rip off Fables?" But it's what the Fables. There was a bad guy who was, getting taken over all these lands in fairyland, and you had all these refugees from all your fairy tales, Snow White and the big bad wolf, who's called Bigby Wolf, and Jack's, just think of all the fairy tales in the world and stuff, right? And they all came to the real world, and they kept a secret community here in the real world. And Bill Willingham came in there and wrote this fantastic story. I think they just referred to the guy invading all the lands and running them off as the adversary. I followed the book from the beginning. I had from the beginning, and I followed for 3.5 years where we are going to find out who the adversary was. And I started getting the idea. People who read it, there was two, three people that were kind of thrown out there. It was by process of elimination. What fairy tales had they not brought in is how we were figuring it out, at least with the people I talked to. And I did this on some message boards too. And we came to the conclusion that Peter Pan was like in the top three. It was going to be Peter Pan. Well, when it came time for Bill Willingham to say, "Here comes the adversary," and when I finally reveal him and who's this big bad guy and stuff, it ended up being Geppetto. You're like, what? That makes no sense because Geppetto was already running around with everybody in the book and stuff. He's part of the community. And Bill Willingham had to be told that Peter Pan was not into public domain. The British courts let an orphanage, and they still have the rights, an orphanage keep the rights like eternally so they can pull money from the Peter Pan to fund the orphanage in England. It's like a one at a time thing. Good grief, Big Wolf, Big Bad Wolf. I just made that connection. I'm going back to bed. Yeah, this is what I do, man. This is what I do. I'm better with the older books because a lot of stuff we have now is crap. So what's the point of me talking about fables, right? Well, I sold my entire collection. I had like 45 issues and I had enough. And that revelation actually made me drop and sell my books. Yeah, Eric Bean is back to bed. I have made him pass out. Sorry, man. So I went back and I found this. Like I think I paid 50 cents for this or something. Here's the big revelation, Fables 41, if I remember right, of who the adversary is, and it's Geppetto. Still rose me raw, but I've forgiven. I have a lot of forgiveness. It's not that big a deal after the years have gone by. You know what? But there are two issues that I recommend to everybody as those little diamonds in the rough. I mean, I really need to get back into going through my collection and showing you some great little stories that aren't worth a lot of money, but it's the love of comics. It's just a great comic book story, right? And what we have here is Bigby Wolf in, I think it was World War II. And what they did is they snuck around. They have Bigby Wolf. It's a flashback tale. This is Fables 28 and 29. And this is one of the two of those books I buy anytime, right there with Hero number dial H for Hero number 10 or something, right? But anyway, it's a flashback story where Bigby Wolf is in World War II, right? And he's like the Sergeant Rock character, and they're like in Transylvania or Romania or something, right? And they run in, and we get a tinge of horror here, and he runs into Frankenstein's monster, more or less, is what we have here. So basically, this is set in the same year, going by memory here, right? I'm going way back to the 2000s, right? So basically, what we have here is around this story is set in the same year that the Universal movie came out of Frankenstein versus the werewolf, but we have it with Big B Wolf with much of a Sergeant Rock flavor there, so, right? Two great issues in the Fable series that I just love, 28 and 29. Oh, it's so cool, man. And Bigby Wolf's telling the story in a flashback. That's what's so cool about somebody is. Yeah, there they are. I hope this is showing up with this, crappy internet. But yeah, check those out, man. Check those out. Fun stuff. Now, I was talking about the Legion of Superheroes a minute. This is not the original book. This is a special reprint from 1970-71. Willingham's Elementals was a great under the radar superhero series. I have an issue conveniently goes into the first step. Yeah, he sent them to like a fairy tale land. Somewhere right in here in one of these shelves, probably down here, I had the entire volume one of the Elementals, and I think I had their first appearance and a crappy annual. I mean, the annual wasn't crappy. The condition that it is isn't crappy. Elementals is fantastic. It was a book of its era. It was highly. I mean, this is when X Men was big and everybody was, had a template, for their superheroes and stuff. But Bill Willingham, by the third issue and stuff, you knew this was going to be very different because you got your powers through dying. And then when Ratman tore up Vortex, he got into detail about how he ripped his insides out. And yeah, very realistic. Oh, Paul Costa here. Everything's going cool, Paulo. Hope everything's good with you. Everybody say hello to Paulo. Live, I am back. That was the YouTube app. The YouTube app, just enter the stream. It gave me, let me get rid of this. Let me get rid of this. Yeah. Hi, guys. Try this again. The YouTube app completely just shut down, and it even gave me the window that told me the YouTube app had shut down. So we're back. We're continuing on from where I left off because when this re uploads, it together. So I'm sorry about that. YouTube app, not the Howler Mouse. It seems to happen with every other stream I do. Okay. So anyway, I talk about the Legion of Superheroes, right? I know I was talking about Fables a minute ago, and I'm not sure where to pick up there, right? But no, Fables was actually cool. It was when Vertigo. I remember now. It was where Vertigo was Vertigo. Paulo, not your fault, Paulo. I don't hold you responsible. That's funny. Paulo, I broke your stream. YouTube app. What can I say? I hate the. I think half my viewers are gone, so I lost half of them. Hopefully they'll come back. But Fables. Like I said, it was when Vertigo was Vertigo. You know, Sandman, Swamp Thing, The Preacher, all these cool little things in between. Then when Fables came out, it was part of Vertigo, obviously, right? But the difference between this is that this was a very much lighthearted tone. Every now and then we got those that fairy tale feel to it, but injected with that real life stuff in there. Much like what it kind of did with Elementals. Now that I think about it, you know, completely different, but still relatable to this and stuff, right? Um, but it was kind of fun, kind of fun. They, you know, what they did with Prince Charming and all his divorced wives and stuff. That's what I mean. Prince Charming was in all these fairy tales. Now we get to see about all his ex-wives talking like Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, and all this stuff. You'd have all his ex-wives meeting every now and then and talking, things like that. Just some fun stuff in there. But going back to Legion of Superheroes, Legion of Superheroes, to me, at least for the Silver Age and some of the Bronze Age, now they had their rabid fans. Don't get me wrong. There's people who have an era of Legion they love. I meet a lot of people who love the Mike Grell stuff. I mean, and that's not really so much my area, even though he and Dave Cockrum kind of came in with the redesigning of the suits to where they look like bathing suits and stuff. Don't get me wrong, right? But Legion of Superheroes to me is just really underrated. I get it. I get it. The exciting stuff was with Fantastic Four with Lee and Stan, and the great things going on with Spider Man and Ditko. I mean, it was exciting. New things were going on. But at the same time, you had Legion of Superheroes were telling in the future, were telling these Silver Age stories, but every now and then there'd be like this darkness in there that to me was unintentional. And Jim Starlin came in there when he was 13 or 14 and was writing these stories by mail before in phone conversations with DC, not knowing how old he was and stuff, right? But there was characters they just put through hell. You know, they would talk about death and stuff. And when you keep in the mindset that these are supposed to be teenagers, that's what makes it even more taboo, in my opinion. That's missed. I think a lot of it has to do with the art where they're drawn like adults. Jim Starlin, Steve, yeah, Jim Starlin was on. Um, he was on Super, yeah, for a hot 5 minutes. He was on Legion around 79 or 1980, I think. But he went by the name Steve Apollo on there, because he didn't like whatever. It's Jim Starlin. They could have been changes, editorial, or somebody made him mad or something. But anyway, but they always had a thing about death in here, and you got to remember these are teenagers. That's what gets me. You know, you had to be a teen to be in the and stuff, and they dealt with death. And they put Lightning Lad through hell. He ended up getting his arm ripped off, put a robot arm on him, thought his sister died, did all this stuff, and then they killed him. And then they came up with a way they couldn't let him go, so they came up with some technology where you hold a rod up in the air like an antenna that extends out, and whoever the lightning would hit, their life force would go into Lightning Lad. They would die, and he would come back to life. And these were used about back in Brad Meltzer's Justice League and Jeff Johns jumping on Justice Society back in the 2000s. I think writing a series set in the future is difficult. Bring that back. Come on. See if it's going to bring that comment. I'll get to you in a minute here. Stop letting the comment come back up. This YouTube app is shitty. I think I need to get look and see if there's an updated one or something, because usually my apps update on their own, but I don't think this YouTube one is. So I'll be forward to looking at that comment, right? Now, again, on the Legion and stuff, right? As the Legion grew up, Paul Levitz came on there. You know, you had Mike Grell, come on there. Dave Cochran come on there. Dave, here we go. I think writing a series set in the future is difficult because they're not technically canon because the events have not happened yet. Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just it's just a fun book. I have a theory on Legion on why you go 1,000 years in the future and it feels like a '60s, '50s, and '60s Silver Age book at certain points in their time. It's because it's romanticism. They're romanticizing history. The Legion didn't deserve someone as noble as Prody. No, they did not. We saw the ramifications of that with Superboy issues in the crisis era of DC. That was DC's fault taking the Superboy out, allowing the Superboy to be taken out of Superman. They did not think that through. That's all I'm going to say. But my theory is that we romanticize history. They wanted to be Superboy. They when they took out what they did with what was just mentioned, they took out the Superboy when they revamped Superman and let John Byrne did it. Well, that completely totally messed up the Legion because the Legion believed they went back and visited Superboy and told him about how you have inspired us to make a team 1,000 years in the future. There was ways to get around that. Even John Burns said that in hindsight he should have kept Superboy in the mythos. Yeah, yeah. I mean, unfortunately the biggest thing is that we did get an excellent crossover story when Byrne left of Supergirl Matrix showing up. I guess that's one of the reasons he did Generations. I've actually thought about doing John Burns Generations. Here we go, doing the comic book top, and there's people out there probably like, "What's he talking about?" and stuff, right? But getting back to what I was saying about the Legion of Superheroes, I think they get by with that Silver Age feel. You know, we live in cycles. Trends come back and eras come back. The same thing. But if you think about your stories of like King Arthur and Robin Hood, and even Grimm fairy tales, they all started out very different. And then as those stories started out, stayed alive, there things were added to them. During the there's a period where romance was added to all the stories that you had of like King Arthur and Robin Hood. That's where Maid Marian came from, and that this was supposedly like 500 years after Robin Hood had been a tale passed down through the generations that they started adding the romance and stuff to it. So think about it. But the story of Superboy, by the time it goes to 1,000 years in the future, of course, it's a romantic kind. They could have added some of that innocence into it. Yeah, Brian. I saw the word Brian Michael Bendis in there in that last comment. So this app is killing me. Where it won't let me get it. But anyway, the Legion started growing up in the early '80s. Paul Levitz came on, Keith Giffen came on, and their run on Legion of Superheroes, I put up with Chris Clare. I put it right there beside it in like this trinity of team books in the early '80s that set the freaking scope for future books and stuff with teams and everything. But I put Paul Gifford and Keith Giffen on Legion of Superheroes up there with Chris Claremont and John Burns, X Men, and George Perez and Marv Wolfman on New Teen Titans. I put Legion right up there with them when they jumped on board. The heroes grew up over the years and stuff at what these guys did. They already started setting up for stories in the years. Thank goodness Brian Michael Bendis came in and saved Superboy. Wait, what? Yeah, Bendis turns every character into Doink the Clown from WWE. Yeah, there's a lot of bit. Like I said, I have said it. I'm documented on here for years. I love Brian Michael Bendis's. Yeah, that's right. Charlton66 is even jumping in there laughing about it. Brian Michael Bendis, great crime writer when he's writing cops and detectives and talking heads and like it's a freaking episode of Law and Order SUV, Law and Order from the early 2000s where it's a bunch of talk. It's not he does a lot. He's one of the few writers that can actually get by with the tell instead of showing, because a good story writer, a good author, it's show don't tell. He's the other way around. Yeah, I love that. Bendis turns every character into Joint the Clown from WWE. I love it. But yeah, Bendis touching superheroes without cops in it and doing crime makes me cringe. I can't do it. I don't hate Bendis, but I don't want to read a superhero work, and he's done so much, and it's all been so forgettable. I mean, seriously, the guy's coming up close to 20 years of writing. We're getting. I mean, we're closer to 20. When did Avengers Disassembled come out? That's where he really broke loose. I've tried not to go on a tangent on the guy, but so much of what he's wrote has been undone and forgotten. And a lot of people love Ultimate Spider-Man. Good, that's good. But basically, he already had the dinner set out for him by Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, John Romita. you know, Gil Kane and all that stuff. He just had to rearrange. He had all he had to do was just rearrange the plates and the forks. You know what I mean? I can go on, but anyway, Legion of Superheroes. I highly recommend issues 285 to 310 if you want to back up there. Powers was his best superhero work. Yeah, I got a huge run of his superpowers work. I got all of Volume 1. I've even got the safety coloring book that came out for the Powers world over here. I was into Powers. I get it. That's what I'm saying. That's kind of good. Um, Unfortunately, as he was coming out with other volumes, you can actually see my volumes get more and more incomplete as you go forward because his superhero stuff was killing me, and I was just like, I can't do this. Um, a little, I'm not going to say this was a holy grail, but I remember seeing this on the newsstand because they came out with a book by Giffen, Alan Grant, Kevin McGuire covers, Barry Kitson doing the art and stuff. I've been showing them off here. They came out with Legion 89. That came out of the Invasion crossover at DC, right? And all of a sudden, you could only get those at comic book shops. Well, I'm in high school. You're lucky to get to the comic book store twice a year. This is the late 80s. The comic book shop being takes an hour to drive now, but back then with the speed limits, it was, I remember now, it was like an hour and a half, it felt like. So it was a miracle to get there back then, right? So you knew about this book Legion through the advertisements, and all of a sudden on the newsstands we get the crossover Adventures of Superman annual, because Powers is a cop story. The superheroes are just as props. Yeah, they're the superheroes and Powers, of course, is exactly what he said. They're props to move the story along. That's why the Powers TV series was a dud. They tried to make it a superhero show and it didn't work. Yeah, we could have a whole stream on Bendis's work and Powers and the TV show. They also miscast Christian Walker. They miscast him. They miscast both of them. Compared to Love's Ultimate Marvel work, Bendis' run was brilliant. Haha. That's just it. I mean, okay, we're gonna take a minute here. Okay, I got this. An Adventures of Superman annual with the Legion in it, where Superman meets the new revamped Mon-El, whose real name is Laura Gand. Uh, he never was really Mon-El. He became Valor in his own book. But anyway, the Powers TV show, the things we were talking about with Powers and what somebody else put up there and stuff, right? The thing about it, oh God, what was the question there? I'm so worked up now. Bendis really kind of sets me off every now and then when we talk comics. Let me get my coffee, get some caffeine in me, and have the opposite as a result of calming down there. The Powers TV show was a dud. They miscast everybody. That was the problem. Then the tone was wrong, and then it looked cheap. I mean, they were walking around. You just had to see the Powers TV show was something I was really pulling for and thinking this could be really cool. And I had actually had like low expectations. I wasn't expecting a movie every episode. You know what I mean? But I was just expecting I mean, it's all laid out there. It's a simple cop show. You know what I mean? Just do Law and Order with a few superheroes, and they did exactly what you're saying. They turned it into a superhero show. They cast, the cast was just wrong for the characters. I mean, the guy was skinny as a pencil, and Christian is huge. You know what I mean? They gave him a beard trying to make him look all tough, and he had this skinny little pencil neck, and I was not buying that he could take down anybody. I mean, everything was just miscast in that. Oh, I could go off on that. Now, going back to this little haul here, um, I've said it many times. There's people out there that's going to remember this with me, right? Johnny Quest on at 6, 7 in the morning. It was in syndication back in the 70s. The show was on prime time in the 60s and went on and on. Went, switched. Power should have been NYPD Blue with Heroes. Yeah, should have had a cam. Now, yeah, and Bendis run on Ultimate Spider-Man. That's what set me off, right? That's just it. I don't like crapping on that series, right? I mean, I don't go out there and I don't hate on it. I don't tell people not to buy it. Thank God they didn't get a hold of top 10. No joke there, brother. But when it comes to Ultimate Spider-Man, that is some people's Spider-Man. What people don't realize is back in the 80s when Jim Shooter was still there, for the Marvel's 25th anniversary, he actually wanted to revamp the entire Marvel universe, start all over, act like it starts then. He said it's gotten too convoluted and uh, too entwined and complicated and things. Much like DC said what happened with their universe because they never set out to have a continuity, and Marvel actually had a continuity. and he actually wanted to do it. And what he proposed was actually the new universe, not the new universe. Yeah, the new universe came later, but what he actually proposed was what ended up being the ultimate line of comics. You know, 12 years later or whatever it was, with Ultimate Spider-Man #1. They will never give him credit, but that was the Jim Shooter proposal back in the day. So they come on there, and it did exactly what it did. It was a jump on point for a generation of kids and comic book collectors who couldn't be there at Marvel in the Silver Age and get that Spider-Man #1, that Amazing Fantasy #15, you know. And they got their Ultimate Spider-Man, and for a lot of people, that Peter Parker is their Spider-Man. That's why I don't like crapping on it. There's a real passion there for people who love that version of Peter Parker. I was out when I saw what they did to Uncle Ben, making him an old, burned out hippie. You know, I was like, no, that's not Uncle Ben. No, no, no. It felt like they were trying too hard to make it modern instead of just having like this organic feel to it. It felt too hard to me. So people love that Ultimate Spider-Man. They do, and I really don't want to crap on it. This was also a time where we were guaranteed by Joe Quesada that we would never have the Ultimate Universe and the Marvel Universe meet. They were always going to be separate. They were really pushing like the Ultimate. People were actually thinking that Ultimate Universe was going to replace the Marvel Universe. And I knew that was never going to happen. It's almost like all of a sudden, they were doing things in the Ultimate X-Men, and then we got that, what was that? That crossover event where Galactus came, if you will, and that's where it lost people, from what I remember. You know, a lot of people were dropping out of that Ultimate Universe big and bad, and they just wanted Peter Parker left alone. All right. All right, so I was talking about annuals, the annuals events that they would have every now and then, just for the annuals in the summers and stuff like that. And it used to be really cool for the summers to hit, and you knew some of these annuals were coming. You would get pinups, and it was just kind of fun, you know. But they had one that I never quite understood, and I'm not going to do the research. I really don't care. But I'm always working on. I'm missing two issues of The Boys by Garth Ennis, #7 and I think #13 or 23 or something like that. And now it's going to be a show on Amazon Prime. I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to get it. Then you have Hitman. Shooter wanted to restart the Marvel Universe during 25th anniversary, and what we got was the new universe. I think that's what that comment said. Yeah, and the new universe would have been great, but they pulled all the money. Jim Shooter knew it was dead in the water before it even started. When John Romita Jr. and some people jumped up and said, "We want to do these books," Jim Shooter looked at him and said, "Why? Why do you want to do this?" I think they knew it was doomed to begin with because Marvel didn't get behind it. You know, Jim Shooter was dealing with the board and all this stuff. There's a whole lot of drama that really came out of that. But we did get the Valiant universe. If you look at the Valiant universe that finally hit with Solar, Magnus, Harbinger, and all that stuff, you'll see that the templates for that was the new universe. Valiant Comics is what the new universe could have been. But anyway, but there was apparently one Pulp Heroes, so I guess we came out with a bunch of annuals where during the summer where I guess they were, I don't know if they were inspired by pulp novels. Jim Shooter explained in his blog how they kept doing budget cuts on him before the universe even started. Yeah, yeah. Some of those things you sort of heard as they were coming out, you know, pre-internet days. Personally, the Ultimate Universe was a what if that got out of hand and ran too damn long. Yeah, I think it lost a lot of focus. I honestly think the Ultimate Universe, to me, it was kind of cool because they were actually doing things that were different in some of the books, and I can roll my eyes at some things they did do, and some of the things they did that was sort of cool. The whole Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch incestual relationship, wrong. You know, some of the ways they handled Captain America started out really good. I think Mark Miller did a good job of having him have that attitude of being from a different time, you know. But they went too far with Hank Pym, what he did with the Wasp. I mean, if you go back and read these books, it was just too much in some areas and just enough in another area. But honestly, I had the first run of Ultimates, which took forever to come out. I was getting them through Gmart and have them ordered and all that stuff. And when I sat down and read them and stuff, it put me to sleep. But I was really out of the Ultimates, the Ultimate Universe, when you had the Hulk talked about Freddie Prinze Jr. I'm like, they're trying too hard to be relevant. Yeah, it just became a mess. But what we get out of it, we got Sam Jackson as Nick Fury. That was cool. I love the old themed annuals. I'm completing the DC Year One annual soon. Cool. Tom Bagley is out there. I'm gonna go back and look at those. I have a bunch of those. Some of those were really, really good. And of course, across the line, some of them were really, really bad. I'm trying to think what some of the really good ones were, but they were good. But anyway, going back to this Hitman annual, this is a Hitman annual I just never ran across. So I think I'm like maybe 2 or 3 issues from completing this series now, including the annuals. But Hitman is fantastic. Garth Ennis at his toned down best, but it's a toned down that's uh, proper, if you will, for this being in the DC universe and stuff. He did really good, and we have a pulp here. Now, this I don't know if they. I seems like I saw an annual or two where they wrote these characters like they were old pulp heroes, like the Shadow and Doc Savage and stuff in that era and stuff. Then some of them, I think they just have themes and stuff. I don't know, um, but really don't care either. I'm not going to look up and see what this was. Nothing really came out of it, right? Okay, guys. So I've got a few movies I could show. I'm sure I've got a random comic around here and stuff like that. That's really about it for this month's haul. And I could talk about Bendis and the Ultimate Universe for hours, but some of it would be really negative. And again, I would be pushing some Bendis stuff. There's people that love Bendis's Daredevil stuff, right? I think the art really pushed a lot of that. I read some of those back in the day when they came out. I mean, they had the 25-cent event. They came out with a comic that was 25 cents to kind of try to pull you in. But there's a lot of Bendis hate. Then out of the blue, there'll be a lot of people that like what Bendis does. Bendis came on Superman, and I knew this was going to be a bad idea. And right away, what happened was what was it? The Action 1000 that we got our first Bendis story, I think. I don't know. I mean, I know he had a Man of Steel miniseries and stuff, right? But when he supposedly pulled the entire Earth into the Phantom Zone, I was out. I mean, I'm like, this should be in other books. This is a crossover event. Everybody should be talking about it. How's the Earth existing without a sun? We've just come too far for something like that just to happen in a book. This isn't the 1950s and 60s where there wasn't a continuity and stuff, right? And as soon as I did that, I'm like, he's trying to go big. He's trying to go big. I finally completed my Hitman run last year. The original series is damn good. The Lady Mini series is eh. Yeah, yeah. I've got a few of the offshoots of that. What was it? Dog Welder and Section 8, Section 6, or something like that. I've got 2, 3 of the miniseries that came out of that too. And then GLA versus the Hitman. That was, kind of fun. You don't get me wrong. They're not all winners, folks. But Hitman, I think, is a great book. Oh, all right, guys. A little bit later, I'm gonna be doing a live stream where I talk about the Avengers Endgame and some of the little Easter eggs I caught that I haven't really seen anybody else really talking about. And everybody was talking about the great last Stan Lee, appearance in this movie. You know what I mean? But why is nobody talking about Jim Starlin being in the movie? Things I just saw. All right, guys. See you later, and it might be sooner than you think. I might do it here pretty soon. I'm gonna check my messages, check my phone, see who's been trying to call, and I might be right back after this, and we'll talk some Avengers. Later, guys.